They don't know what it's like to grow up poor.
Sir, what is your name?
Marshall Mathers.
And Mr. Mathers, can you read, write, and understand the English language?
Raised by a mother, it was a single parent, a whole family full of nutty people that fight constantly.
The man whose lyrics earlier attacked his mother.
On welfare all your fucking life, bouncing around from school to school to school.
It's really, really sad that little kids are listening to this.
Death in your family, guns in your family.
He is a violent misogynist. He advocates raping and murdering his mother.
And the Grammy goes to...
Artist of the Year. The award goes to...
The Oscar goes to Eminem.
Controversies.
Eminem.
Your relationship with Eminem, where did it begin? How's it going? And what does he think of me?
Em is the greatest rapper of all times.
I just adore him.
I do too.
They cannot tell me what I should say or what I shouldn't say because they don't know my life. They don't know how my life has been.
And I was gonna make it regardless of what anybody said.
Picture this, 20-year-old Marshall Mathers and his friends were riding in their car. A Michigan resident since moving to the D with his mom as a child. Marshall couldn't help but get sucked into the Motor City street life. He decided to take out his frustrations by participating in a drive-by shooting. Rolling past two hookers, Eminem fired his paintball gun, and not long after they were pulled over by the police. They were thrown to the ground and they were handcuffed. Em and his friend, they were taken to jail, but not before one of the cops called Em a homophobic slur. That's because, well, he was wearing an earring. Em sat in a cell anticipating some jail time for the assault. After the witnesses didn't show up to court, well, the case was thrown out. Thank God for hookers. They got other places to be. Well, this event would be loosely recreated in his famous movie 8 Mile. Em has fired metaphorical shots at nearly every celebrity you've ever heard of. From NSYNC and Britney Spears all the way to a guy named Donald Trump. Along the way, he's caught flack from just about every interest group on the planet for his violent, misogynistic, and homophobic lyrics. In 2000, Canadian politician Valerie Smith, she even tried to have him banned from performing in Canada. Well, that night at his Toronto show, he gave her a shout out.
But I dedicate this next motherfucking song to that Valerie Smith.
Even his moms tried to take a piece of the action, taking him to court for slandering her name. Hey, if you're over the age of 25, the chances are your parents have had some beef with Eminem's lyrics. But as the man once stated, Saving Private Ryan was the illest, sickest movie I've ever watched. I didn't see anybody criticizing that one for violence. Despite the controversy, Em is widely considered the voice of a generation, producing 10 solo albums, 1 EP, a greatest hit CD, selling over 100 million albums worldwide, starring in a blockbuster film, and even winning an Oscar for his track Lose Yourself. Can you really name a more famous song from the last 20 years? I'll wait. Now, the icon has also overcome several personal obstacles during his professional career. This includes a messy on-again, off-again relationship with his wife Kimberly Scott, an addiction to prescription meds that nearly claimed his life, and the death of his best friend and D12 bandmate Proof. Unfortunately, the problems, they do not begin here. They actually go way, way back. And in order to celebrate a storied career as arguably the most famous artist of the 21st century, well, it's important to understand his roots. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Michael McCrudden, documenting the life and career of Eminem prior to fame. Here for you, of course, on Before They're Famous. Now, we've done several profiles on Em over the past few years, but none of them have dug quite as deep as this one, and we're gonna give the man the treatment he deserves. We've also done epic updates on Cardi B and Billie Eilish. You can check those out as well. In the meantime, if you have a celebrity in mind for us to do an epic bio on, sound off in the comments down below. This video was brought to you by our good friends over at Candy Pens, and now let's start talking about Slim Shady on Before They Are Famous. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Boom!
You can't come in here. You can't come in here. There's nothing going on in here.
Well, the name Eminem in recent years has replaced automobiles as Detroit's most famous export. Even some of Eminem's biggest fans forget that he wasn't born in Motor City. Just watch self-proclaimed Eminem superfan DC Youngfly screw up his birthplace during a Genius Test episode. Yes, even superfans, we all f*** it up.
He grew up in Detroit, but Eminem was actually born in what state?
California.
To understand the anger so prevalent in Marshall's lyrics, one must first understand where it comes from. I'm not just talking his Detroit upbringing, it goes a little deeper than that. While his trademark style has become synonymous with Rock City, it turns out he actually has deep roots in America's rural Midwest. Made up of English, Scottish, German, and Swiss ancestry, well, the rap god's lineage is stained with the damage of drug abuse, abandonment, and mental illness.
My album is kind of like inviting you into my world. If you want to come into it, you do. If you don't, you don't.
Marshall's grandmother, Betty Cresson, was born in Highland, Kansas. Her mother left her father, taking 9-month-old Betty, to live with her alcoholic grandfather in St. Joseph, Missouri. St. Joseph is a small working-class town located 1 hour away from Kansas City. While it had gone down in history as the death location of legendary outlaw Jesse James, it would soon be known as the birthplace of the man who robbed you of your innocence. It was here Betty spent her formative years, getting married to a man named Nelson at just 14 years of age. On January 5th, 1955, Betty gave birth to Debbie Nelson, and she was the first of several kids. Now, Debbie was known to have violent outbursts as a child. After Betty divorced Mr. Nelson, her daughter's dysfunctional surroundings left her vulnerable to many different types of abuse. At the age of 12, Debbie claims to have been molested by a man Betty had over. Debbie grew up in the middle of the hippie movement, described as a flower child who adored Jimi Hendrix. In 1970, at just 15, well, she met a boy named Marshall Bruce Mathers II, who was 6 years her senior. Now, the two played in a band together called the Daddy Warbucks, touring along Marshall's home state of North Dakota as well as Montana. The couple eloped in 1972. Not long after, pregnant Debbie relocated back to St. Joseph, Missouri, and on October 17, 1972, her son Marshall Bruce Mathers III was born. Debbie states that when he was born, she was determined to provide for her son, giving him the life that she never had. In an interview, she claimed, "I made a promise with God, the alcohol, the drugs, the drinking, the pot, any of that stuff, they would never go through that. The fighting, none of that." And as we all know, well, things don't always go as planned. Now, the family moved to North Dakota, shacking up in Marshall Sr.'s parents' basement and taking up work at a local motel his father had owned. Now, this is when things started falling apart. You mean an underage marriage is destined for failure? I can't believe it. Many family members close to Debbie claim that her husband was highly abusive. He would even like to throw knives at people's feet to see how close he could get without hitting them. Yeah, and we thought Debbie was the crazy one. Now, with the abuse being too much to bear, she took Marshall and headed back to St. Joe, marking the first of many moves he would experience throughout his youth. Marshall was introduced to music pretty much out of the womb. Debbie, being a fan of rock, well, she took him to see Talking Heads when he was just a toddler. As you can imagine, young Marshall, he was left curious about his father's whereabouts. As a little boy, he would draw pictures and give them to his grandma, asking if she could send them to his father. Now, Betty, she did her best, reaching out to the Marshall's family for anyone who was in touch with him, but as it turns out, he had taken off to California. As he got older, of course, Em learned to write, and he would send his father letters, only to find them labeled return to sender. To this day, well, he's never met Marshall Sr. Probably for the best. Eventually, young Marshall, well, he gave up. Now, he exhibited strange behavior as a boy. Family members, they claimed that he constantly rocked back and forth whenever he heard music. It got so intense that he had to be put on Ritalin. And one teacher at his elementary school, she told Debbie that she believed that her boy, he was retarded. Yeah.
And where are we headed for? We're gonna go to my old house, and I'm gonna knock on the door and see if I can get in because I left something in my room.
Em spent much of his childhood bouncing back and forth from Missouri to Michigan, switching schools an average of every 2 to 3 months. He at one point lived in the small Missouri town of Savannah. The length of time, however, it's been unspecified. We did find an article written by a St. Joe newspaper where a man named Andy Stanley, he suggested Em and Debbie lived in the Cedar Tree Apartments in Savannah. He went on to tell a story where the rapper, now at the height of his career, well, he showed up to Miller's General Store by Highway 71, where Andy worked as a cashier. He claims that Em walked in with 2 bodyguards and asked him where the old middle school was. He then gave Andy a signed photo that read, "Andy, nice meeting ya. Appreciate the love, homie." Now, due to his impoverished Midwest roots in addition to his character in 8 Mile, well, many have come to believe that Eminem grew up in a trailer park. This is a misconception. However, he did live in many different types of homes.
Everyone think I'm from a trailer park. Why can I not break that stereotype? I've lived in them, yes. Many of them for many years.
Eminem would grow up alongside his grandma Betty's son, Ronnie Nelson, who was only 3 years younger than him. His uncle Todd Nelson would also be present in his life, although Em has admitted that the two, they weren't that close.
What are you doing, Chris?
Getting some revenge. You don't just think you can fire motherfuckers and get away with it.
Eminem has opened up about his family's love of firearms. Eminem shared a story where Todd took him to a Missouri firing range at just 11 years old so he could shoot AK-47s. He would also fire a Colt 45 Todd would later use to allegedly murder a supposed pedophile. Yeah, family. You can't live with them. You can't shoot with no mental illness, it ran in Eminem's family, and mixing the illness with guns is definitely not pleasant. Todd, he would unfortunately commit suicide at the age of 43 after shooting himself in the head. It was Marshall's birthday. His uncle Ronnie, he also exhibited several signs of instability. According to Marshall, Ronnie burnt his grandmother's house down at 7 years old, and he also killed a hamster after throwing it in the microwave. Due to their short age gap, Ronnie and Marshall, they were close. They were both children from broken homes surrounded by absolute craziness. And with all the moving Marshall did, Ronnie was the only consistent friend he had throughout his childhood. Ronnie was a music lover who would often make himself mixtapes, and it was through his uncle's love of music that he was introduced to a little thing called hip-hop. Ronnie brought over the Breakin' soundtrack, which featured Reckless by good old Ice-T. Now Marshall, he was introduced to a whole new world, immersing himself in hip-hop culture. He and Ronnie would even go to the park with a piece of cardboard and attempt to breakdance. Marshall also began to show an interest in rhyming words, often bursting into Debbie's room late at night to ask if one particular word rhymed with the other. Now rappers would express themselves and how they felt through lyrics, something young Marshall, he truly respected. Eminem had found another early form of expression. As a lonely kid, he would often draw comic book characters. Now professionals have suggested that this was a way for him to feel powerful in an environment where he was anything but. Eminem has claimed to be a victim of abuse at the hands of his mom Debbie. Because he attended several different schools, he was also the victim of bullying. One such bully was D'Angelo Bailey, who has been immortalized in the song Brain Damage. He also tried to sue Em, didn't think that went anywhere. Guy's a janitor now. Good for you, D'Angelo. While attending Dort Elementary School in Roseville, Michigan, Debbie would pick him up from school. One afternoon, he didn't come out of the building. After two kids told her that he was in the bathroom, she ventured inside to find him laying in a pool of his own blood. He had been bludgeoned with a snowball packed with a hard object. Debbie rushed her son to the hospital, and in the span of 4 days, he apparently saw over 21 doctors, all of whom said he would never be the same. As it turns out, he had suffered a cerebral concussion, which would alter his brain. Now, according to Marshall, when he woke up, the first thing he said was, "I can spell elephant." Debbie, she had to teach Marshall to speak once again, as well as dress himself and tie his own shoelaces. She ended up suing the school district after her medical bills came in at over $150K. It was incidents like this that affected him heavily as a young boy. Settling in the Detroit area in his teens, Marshall found himself the odd man out. One of the few white kids at a predominantly African-American school, he was often the subject of reverse racism. Now, in order to fit in, the naive kid, he would rock an African medallion out in public. And as you can imagine, the reception, it wasn't too great. Anger was piling up inside him, and there was little for him to do. He couldn't escape through comics or superheroes. By now, he was a little too old for that. In 1986, a new record was released on the scene, something that caught the 14-year-old's attention. A record from an unusual trio out of Brooklyn who rapped about brass monkeys and how you just had to fight for your right to party. The record in question was Licensed to Ill, and that funny-looking rap group, they were the Beastie Boys. This wowed the young Midwest drifter who at the time was only used to seeing black artists dominate the art form. Something clicked in his head, and from there on out, he knew that he wanted to rap. Speaking on the Beasties, M stated, "It was them being themselves that helped me figure out how to relax and be me. Made me feel like I could get up there and rock the mic and rock millions." Marshall became a student of the genre, studying the lyrics of not just the Beasties, but LL, Rakim, and Masta Ace. He eventually dropped out of Lincoln High School after repeating the 9th grade 3 times. He would later go back.
I believe that it is a very important part of our freedom and an integral part of the American dream. Yet there are some women who say that they're not down with it.
Around this time, Debbie would also give birth to his younger half-brother, Nathan. Now, the first time Eminem got on stage at a club was at a place known as the Rhythm Kitchen. His future manager, Paul Rosenberg, he posted a flyer from that very venue on his blog. Going by the initials M&M, the rapper, he wasn't able to let out a sentence before the audience began to boo. His first time didn't work out, he kept at it. He studied the dictionary and he developed a unique rhyming skill few had seen before.
My name is Shady. His name is Proof. Yo, we used to have a roof up on my house.
Eventually he got so good that his friend Deshaun Holton, aka Proof, well, he would sneak him into the cafeteria at Osborne High School in Detroit. There he would make Eminem battle other aspiring rappers while betting money on the white boy. Eminem would tear them all apart, and since nearly everyone would bet against them, well, Proof made a pretty penny. The two, they would split the winnings when it was all done. Now the two, they would often pull stunts like this. In fact, Marshall, he was often known for his goofiness. During this time, another love came into his life. In the late 80s, his mom Debbie, she housed foster kids for the state of Michigan. One of these young girls was 13-year-old Kimberly Scott. Her and Marshall, they hit it off over time, with Debbie finding the two fooling around in his bedroom. And well, from there on out, the two would become an item.
Happy birthday to you.
Because Debbie treated Kim like her own daughter, she didn't approve of the two having a relationship, and eventually she booted them from her home. And the couple, well, they stayed at a home of Marshall's friend Bob. He continued his quest to become a professional rapper, playing with a group called New Jacks and later Basement Productions, alongside Proof and another friend called Mannix. He would also go on to battle at Detroit St. Andrews Hall. In this venue's basement was a place known as the Shelter. It was here the MC would begin to make a name for himself as a vicious spitter.
Any rapper saying those kind of rhymes in this day and age, in this period of time, trying to battle Eminem.
Well, the couple stayed together, living at his friend Bob's house nearby. Well, Marshall's family life was falling into turmoil. Debbie, she had developed an addiction to prescription medication, and she remained a looming presence in his life. But something else had soon happened. Marshall's uncle Ronnie, he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head at just 17 years old. Suffering from depression, he had committed suicide. It was a heavy loss for young Marshall. His childhood friend who helped him open his eyes to the world of hip-hop had killed himself, and the reminder of his family's history of both mental illness and violence, well, it made it all the more devastating. Too distraught to attend Ronnie's funeral, well, Grandma Betty, she sent him a video. In the early 90s, Basement Productions, they changed their name to Soul Intent, and they recorded an album called Crackers and Cheese. This would attract the attention of Bass Brothers and FBT Productions. His relationship with Kim, well, it was a rocky one. Half the time, Marshall was living with Proof and several other rappers in a house on 8 Mile and Novara Street. This was on the east side of Detroit. They would grind tirelessly recording music while supporting themselves with jobs at Little Caesars Pizza. When M would go visit Kim, well, he would venture through rough neighborhoods. Now, there is a rumor that Eminem was once shot on his way to her house, but we believe that that was misreported. He was apparently just shot at. Not as bad, but still. And would also take up work at Gilbert's Lodge in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. Now, due to his schedule with music, he would constantly ask for time off. Rumors were that Eminem was a decent short order cook, with his favorite food to make for himself being fajitas. He would often befriend the restaurant customers, and some of them liked him so much that they would drive all the way back into Big Bad Detroit just to attend his gigs. An associate by the name of Maurice Malone, well, he would also open up a venue known as the Hip Hop Shop on 7 Mile Road. There, some of Detroit's heaviest rap battles would go down. The goal for many battle rap participants was to eventually end up competing in the Rap Olympics or Scribble Jam, an annual hip-hop festival held in Cincinnati, which was dubbed the biggest music event outside of Woodstock. Eminem, however, he had his eyes set on a hit record. It was at this time when he would meet local Detroit MC, con artist, Bizarre, Conniva, Bugs, and Swift, and they quickly became his associates.
Look, oh my God, dude, it's him, for real, dude, for real? Dude, I know it's him, man, dude, I'm telling you, dude, I know it's him, God!
Eminem's drive for success in the Detroit music scene gave him a chip on his shoulder. No matter how many battles he competed in, no matter how many ciphers he slayed, people were doubting the white boy from Missouri every chance they got. Growing frustrated with this reality, well, he wanted to sink his teeth into anybody he could. Hanging around the Roseville Music Shop record time, well, Eminem would even battle a young Kid Rock at his in-store signing. The pressure built in 1995 when Kim gave birth to daughter Haley Jade Mathers. With a daughter and a low-paying restaurant job, well, it was do or die for Marshall Mathers. He needed a hit album that the mainstream market would enjoy. Signed to FBT Productions, the Bass Brothers, along with Kaniva, helped produce a 10-track album called Infinite. Along with the album's title track, Eminem's debut included upbeat, radio-friendly hits like Tonight, Searchin', It's Okay, and Never Too Far. With creative, fun, and catchy tunes from a unique voice like M's, there was no way this album could be anything than a smash hit. Infinite, it sold 1,000 copies. Now, things are gonna go from bad to worse, but before that happens, well, I need to tell you guys about our friends over at Candy Pens. You've all heard of Candy Pens, right? Well, if the name doesn't ring a bell, I got a good feeling you've seen them before. Candy Pens was named Best Vaporizer of 2018 by High Times due to its combination of popular technology and flashy design. And Candy Pens, well, they've quickly become the go-to choice for vaping in the rap community. They've got co-signs from DJ Khaled, Fatboy SSE, Young M.A., Amber Rose, and A$AP Rocky. In fact, A$AP, he's got his own line called the Flacco Jody Collection, and Amber Rose, yeah. There's reasons you've seen billboards of her all over Los Angeles because she's been promoting her own signature line. Now, Candy Pens, they are for those 18 years and older, and seeing as I'm the official YouTube ambassador, well, they've given me the ability to get you 25% off your entire order during checkout. That's right, there's a link down below. Use the promo code BTWF25. Now let's get back to the king, Marshall Mathers. Music critics called the Infinite album an ill-fated attempt to replicate the sounds of MCs like Nas and AZ, both of whom happen to be influences of Marshall's. His album had flopped, his peers in the music scene, they didn't accept him. On top of that, his relationship with Kim, it was falling apart. Moving back in with his mother, he would begin consuming pills from her stash. In 1997, he was fired from Gilbert's Lodge, and one night while down on his luck, he decided to end it all. Marshall survived the suicide attempt, but he had lost his drive to continue doing hip-hop. This was his life. His father had abandoned him, his family members, they had committed suicide. He had been robbed, he'd been beaten, he had been abused by everyone from the kids at school to his very own mother. And that was music career. But eventually M would be convinced to give it one last try. And this time, well, he would embrace the darker side of his artistry. This time he would harness the pain and the turmoil that he had experienced his entire life and develop an alter ego. This would be known as Slim Shady. With the personality of Shady, he began writing the craziest, most sadistic, and offensive lyrics possible. In 1997, the Slim Shady EP was released. The record's first track, Low Down Dirty, showcased his dramatic shift in content. The overall reception of the EP, it was positive, with most critics noting his change. Finally, the pieces started falling together. Eminem and Bizarre, they would travel to Jersey where they made connections with Outsidaz, a hip-hop collective comprised of spitters from the East Coast. Eminem would take the stage with the crew to open for the Wu-Tang in Staten Island. He would also begin working with Proof and his homies, forming Detroit rap group D12. With the power of the Slim Shady EP backing them, as well as his group mates, well, M continued rocking shows, eventually ending up at none other than Scribble Jam. It was here he battled his way up the ladder, making it to the final verses against Juice. Now M, he ended up placing second. After losing to Juice, well, a guy approached him and he was impressed by M's raw aggression. He asked if he had a tape that he could see, so M gave him a copy of the Slim Shady EP. Discouraged, the rapper, he returned to Detroit, but soon after he received word that the person he gave his album to was an employee for Interscope Records, and he had forwarded the music to Mr. Jimmy Iovine. He played that for Dr. Dre, and all of a sudden Eminem, well, he was sitting down with the doctor. When M showed up, he was dressed in a yellow jumpsuit, he didn't have any other money or any other clothes, and Dr. Dre, he wasn't expecting to meet a white boy. But as they say, well, the rest is history. As for the rest of the story, well, you know the story because this is Before They Are Famous. My name is Mike McCrud. Thank you so much for checking out this video. There are 2 more epic biographies for you to choose from. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Candy Pens. Be sure to check them out. A link is down below. I'll see you guys in another video. And M, if you watch this video, just give me a thumbs up on Twitter. Just let me know. Don't give me a thumbs down. We tried really hard. Okay, bye.